welcome back to another episode of the Mmf Podcast. Nick and I are fresh off a trip to Philadelphia for WrestleMania 40, and we are filled with that Philly pride. Am I right, Nick?
Definitely, and it's going to show in the movies we're talking about today, which of course is the first two Rocky movies, two of our favorite movies. We're going to get to a few of the other movies in the franchise in the next pod, I think, but we're just going to stick to the first two today because I think those two are real, like, one piece almost in a way.
Right you are, Harry. We are going to do Rocky 1 and 2 today, the original two movies in the franchise, and then we'll get to the 3 and 4 next Friday, or next episode of the MF Pod. Nick, do you think we'll do an episode on 5 and 6?
No.
Okay.
I mean,
just
I
wanted
could
to clarify
talk about
now.
Rocky Balboa a little bit, but I don't want to watch Rocky 5 ever again for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I'm not a fan either. So, today's topic, Rocky 1 and 2. Rocky is one of my favorite franchises of all time. I saw it at a pretty young age, which I know you said you saw it just a couple years ago for the first time. So they're kind of embedded into me, into my being, the Rocky movies. It's one of the most inspiring, magical hero's journey tales of all time. And it's really good as far as sequels go, too. Rocky 2, 3, 4. We'll skip to 6. But it's one of those franchises where you could really clearly see every character progress. And they tried a lot of different things as the series went on. So it's one of my favorite franchises to watch through. I probably do it at least once a year. You'll watch one Rocky movie and then all of a sudden you'll be on the last one. You can't just watch one. It just flows so naturally.
For sure. And I think the first movie in particular, I mean, as you can tell by my Eagles hat, I've grown up a Philly sports fan from my dad. I'm not even a big sports guy, but I do like the Eagles. And growing up a Philly fan, you always got that sense that we're always just losing all the time, that we're just never quite among the best. That's how I felt growing up. And so I think the Rocky movie really captures that feeling of the entire people of Philadelphia in a way where, it starts out, everyone's kind of down on their luck in a way, nobody's really doing what they would expect to be doing in life. And they're all just sort of like wasting around trying to figure out where they belong in life. And I think it really captures that city, that feeling that the people of Philadelphia have felt for like centuries, honestly.
Yeah, it's a hard-working, underdog city. The working man. And Rocky is the people's champ. He is the perfect personification of just your average guy in the neighborhood in Philly. And all of a sudden, he has this shot. A magical shot at the biggest title in the world. I could do a better Mick impersonation to some other lines.
You're a bum.
You're a bum. Rocky, in the beginning of the movie, we kind of see a little bit of his life. He's obviously a boxer. He does these like small fights at clubs for very little money. He's kind of a brawler. He doesn't really have a lot of defense. He just kind of clubs, and the other guy's even headbutting him in the fight, and the ref doesn't really do anything about it. It's very underground, gritty. His main job is a collector for the mob. He goes around, but you see how he actually has a heart. He doesn't want to, be that ruthless collector that breaks people's fingers and arms and stuff. His boss, Gazzo, tells him, if he doesn't give you the money, I told you to break his thumb. And Rocky has such a soft, heart that he can't do it. He goes, I'm supposed to break your thumb, but I'm not going to do it.
I think that's what makes him so appealing as a character, is obviously he's this very like large, masculine, like strong presence, and like he's a fighter obviously, but like he's not a violent person. Like anytime like he's like told to like do something like that, like he can't do it. Like it's just not in his nature. Like I'm kind of skipping ahead a little bit, but I remember just thinking like, why the fuck doesn't Rocky just punch Paulie's lights out? I'm so sick of Paulie being an annoying asshole. I want him to just clock him in the face. And he doesn't do that because that's not in his character. That's not Rocky's purpose. The purpose of Paulie is for Adrian to eventually, stand up to him. It's not really Rocky's place to like shut Paulie up,
Yeah. I mean, he does threaten him. He grabs him and he goes like, hey, when he really insults Adrian and upsets her. He basically says, "I could kill you right now if you don't stop," but he doesn't actually hit
But
him,
he
of
doesn't.
course.
He can't do it.
Yeah, yeah, but that shows you he walks around with a big stick when it's required. He's a respectable man, but he doesn't use his power. He doesn't abuse his power, of course. That's not really his character to lash out at people. You were telling me when we were in Philadelphia how you don't like Rocky 5 because the whole message of his character is kind of off.
He
The street
fights.
fight.
He fights in the ring. You know, he doesn't. He doesn't break a guy's thumbs because he doesn't want to believe in that. He doesn't like attack people. And then Rocky 5 ends in an actual street fight, which like maybe he's not starting it, and maybe he's just like on the defense and just finishing it. But like it's still just such an out of character, like weird way to take Rocky. There's a few moments like in the later movies where it's just like this doesn't feel like Rocky. It's just a little off.
Yeah, I totally agree. But a lot of people say the street fight is the only redeemable scene from that movie, and I don't even think it's that good. It's not really worth watching just for that.
What a yikes if that's the redeeming quality.
All right, back to Rocky 1. So he's a loan shark. He's a boxer. He doesn't really have the best life. You know, he doesn't make a lot of money. He doesn't have a companion. He really likes this local girl who works at a pet store across the street from his boxing gym. Adrian enters the story when we see him trying to flirt with her a couple times. And she is so shy in this first movie. She could barely even get out a word. You know, hi, Rocky, hi. And it brings me back to what I said earlier. We'll talk about it when we cover the later movies, but it's amazing to see how her character progresses throughout the films because it is such a insane contrast to when we first meet her to where she ends up at the end of the franchise.
Yeah, she's a great character, her arc and everything. I mean, I love those two as a couple. I think they're like probably one of the greatest movie couples of all time because they just like complement each other so well. Like you said, even though she's so shy, like Rocky, I don't know if confident is the right word, but he's just very like he doesn't quit. So like he's always gonna try and go to Adrian and try and like tell her a joke to make her laugh. And you can tell that she does like him because she does laugh at his jokes and she does like say like bye Rocky, like even though she kind of like doesn't say anything to him. So it's just a really like sweet relationship. You just want to see them end up together because they both you can tell they both just feel like alone in the world and you want to see them like come together.
Yeah. And they even kind of acknowledge how they're different and they fill each other's gaps. During the ice skating scene, they have a lot of similarities that they talk about. One being Rocky goes, his dad told him, you don't have a brain, so you better make up for it with your body. Adrian's mother said, you don't have much of a body, you got to make up for it with your brain. So they kind of, from day one, are filling each other's, gaps and weaknesses. The
That's one of my
parallels.
favorite visuals in the movie too. Is the ice skating rink when she's like awkwardly skating and he's just like, I don't ice skate. It's bad on the ankles. So he's just like running right beside her. It's so funny.
Do you know the story behind why there was no extras in that scene?
No.
Apparently, they just were running low on money and they just couldn't afford to have like a full rink of people, but they used it to their advantage. They just said it was Thanksgiving and Rocky just bribed the guy to let them skate after hours. So they were able to work it into the story in a very great and unique way.
It works out for the better. I like them being the only people at the ice skating rink. It's a weird
Yeah.
situation. It's like it shows how desperate Rocky is to have a good date that he goes to an ice skating rink on Thanksgiving when no one's there. He's like, just let me have it. I don't know what else to do. He doesn't even have a plan before the date. He's like, what does your sister like, Paulie? He's like, she likes ice skating. And so he's like, all right, I'll go ice skating.
Paulie is one of my favorite characters in the franchise too. I mean, I'd honestly say he's like number 2 for me. No, number 3. I got to pick Mick above Paulie, but Paulie is right up there. And he has some of the funniest one-liners and just his carelessness. I think I have a favorite Paulie line in every movie. And I think in Rocky 1, it's either, I'd like to kill the moron that broke the frickin' mirror. Just from the moment one, when we first meet him, he's just complaining. Because that's his character. He just complains about everything. But a great moment is when Rocky asks him about 5 times in a row, your sister knows I'm coming, right? And he just keeps going, yeah, she's very excited. Then they cut to them like they're farther along in their walk. Your sister knows I'm coming, right? Yeah, she's very excited. And they get like to the door, and he says it one more time. And they get inside, and Adrian's in shock. She runs into the bedroom. Paulie, why didn't you tell me he was coming over? It's just a great moment. He says it like 10 times, and it was just a complete lie.
That's Paulie. He's like a mess. He's like a leech, like a toxic presence just in their lives constantly, but he's like family, so it's like, what are you gonna do? He's just always gonna be there.
His abusive scenes are hard to watch sometimes, but his I really like his complaining and sarcasm. I hate the scene where he throws the turkey out in the alleyway. It's just very disturbing to see stuff like that. You know, it's very abusive, but it makes sense why Adrian wants to move out, of course, because she doesn't want to deal with that anymore. It's a toxic relationship, but it leaves room for Paulie to, you know, better his character later on. And when we get into the later movies, we'll talk about how he becomes, you know, a better person, especially in like Rocky Balboa. He kind of admits that he was a bad person, but we said we're not going to cover that one. So let's just go back to Rocky 1. But there's a moment in Rocky 4 that I really like from his character. So we'll talk about that when we get there. Another one of my favorite moments with Paulie is when they're in the meat locker and Rocky, and they're walking past all the pig carcasses, and Paulie's throwing them at Rocky, pushing them into him. You'll end up on a hook if you mess with Gazzo. And then Rocky corrects him and goes, hey, Gazzo's a good man. Don't say that. The mob boss. I like that part.
Yeah, you don't really feel like Gazzo is like the typical mob boss you would see in movies, because like you don't actually see him like do anything. He's just sort of, he's like Rocky's like angel on his shoulder in a way. He's like always just trying to give Rocky away. He's like, Rocky, like, what? Come on, like, what are you doing? But like you'd like probably think like, oh, this guy's definitely like killing people like when he's not on screen.
Yeah, I mean, Gazzo is a mob boss. I mean, he's at least a captain, I would say. You know, like he's not maybe he's not the boss, but he's at least a high-ranking member of the mafia. He's definitely around killings and murder and people getting whacked. But Rocky just didn't want to be involved in that side of the business. I'm sure he made it very clear, his parameters. You know, I just want to be a collector. I'm sure if he wanted to, because Gazzo in the second movie especially, he's trying to get Rocky to put his money on the street and be more involved. And Rocky's like, I'm out. I'm just going to stay out. You know, I don't want to do this anymore. So,
yeah, Rocky joined up with him mostly out of like necessity. And even then he couldn't do his job right because he just doesn't have it in him to break the guy's thumbs. He's like, I need this money. And he's like, oh, whatever. Like, he's good for it.
Should have broke your thumbs. Another thing that's really great about Rocky 1 and 2 is we really get moments to sit with the characters. I love Rocky 3 and 4, don't get me wrong, but they are so like next scene, next scene, next scene. It's more Rocky 4 than 3. Rocky 3 has some scenes with the characters, you know, slow pace, letting things sit, and really just spending time with them. By the time we get to Rocky 4, it's just like montage, 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 montage. You never get moments to sit with the characters. Also, Rocky still looks like a human being in Rocky 2 and 1, whereas Rocky 3 and 4, he looks more like a Greek god. And I get it. Rocky was a huge thing, and they want to show him being a champion, being in really good shape. But we do lose a little bit of that, you know, hometown hero kind of vibe when he loses the baby fat on his face and he becomes like a statue, a Greek god statue.
Well, how's he going to go against future WWF champion Hulk Hogan if he doesn't look shredded?
I guess you're right, but you see what I mean, though, right?
No, I know what you mean. Like the first two movies, like in particular, have a very like gritty feel to them as well. They just feel like gross and nasty. They're like down in the streets of Philadelphia, and the city feels like a character in it. And you kind of lose that element as the movies progress. Like Rocky moves out of Philadelphia, he moves to Los Angeles with Apollo, and so we kind of lose that kind of identity for the movies, that like real gritty, scrappy feel to it. And you don't really gain that back until Rocky Balboa. I mean, he goes back to Philly in Rocky 5, but like, fuck that movie.
Fuck Rocky 5. They basically just do Rocky 5 all over again. It's basically like, let's erase Rocky 5. They don't bring up the brain damage or anything. They said, let's just erase that from history and try it again. but better. Shout out to Christine. Again, but better. Anyway, another character we didn't talk about, dude, yet is Apollo. He is awesome. I love his character development as well. From Rocky 1 all the way to Rocky 3. I don't feel like his character really has anything new come out of it in Rocky 4. But it changes. From Rocky 1, 2, and 3, it's a different Apollo every time. Rocky 1, he is so cocky about the fight. He cares more about the marketing. He's like, I want the mayor being sent 100 roses. I want the mayor's wife being sent roses. Like, let's have hams sent to the governor. Like, he's just caring about, like, marketing the fight and making money. He doesn't even think twice about training or if Rocky's going to actually be, a challenge. And then Rocky 2, he's like full-on psycho killer mode. Like, Rocky needs to die. That was an embarrassment, that first fight, and I'm going to humiliate him in front of the whole world. And he's a completely different, more evil character. And once he loses that fight, it's basically a moment of acceptance finally. He's like, the first time I wasn't really prepared. Rocky 2, he was in the best shape of his life, and he still lost, so he could finally just retire and be like, okay, he got me,
The thing with Apollo is he's a character, like he's like a self-made man, like he's like been successful for a number of years as far as we know, and so he knows how the media works and he knows how to manipulate it and how to like react to it. And so when he has that fight with Rocky, he immediately like his ego gets knocked down a peg and he knows like, oh fuck, this is not good for me. For him, it's like mostly like a performance and a character. Like there's always mutual respect between them. You get the impression because like in Rocky 2, Rocky goes up to him in the hospital. He's like, hey, you give me your best? And he just goes, yeah.
Yeah.
Because he respects Rocky as a fighter, even though Rocky's like coming after his like place at the top now, and now he feels threatened. And so he has to like put on a show because he doesn't want to look weak to the fans of the sport and just the media in general. Like he's getting hate mail from people in Rocky 2. He's like, this
His
one's
kids
from
at
London.
school
It
are
says
getting
the fight was
bullied.
a fake. Go kill yourself.
Yeah. I love that moment in the hospital. I'm glad you brought that up. He comes into the room and Apollo's like sleeping. Yeah, I'm sure if Rocky came in with somebody else or, with Paulie or whatever, Apollo maybe would have had the character going a little bit. But because it was one-on-one, it was just him and them, no cameras, no microphones. It's like, yep, that was my best. I won't lie. It's a really great moment. If they didn't have that in the movie, we might think of Apollo a little differently.
For like everything you see in all the movies, you kind of get the impression that Apollo is definitely just the better fighter overall. But for Rocky, it doesn't matter about being the best fighter. For him, like in the first movie, it was just about being able to hang and feeling like he matters and like he belongs somewhere. And so that's what's so great about it, is because winning isn't the purpose of that final act. It's just about proving that he's meant to be there and he can hang with the best.
Yeah, definitely. And there's those moments of doubt where when he's lying in the bed with Adrian and he's like, I don't know if I can win this. I just want to know that I can make it to the distance and I'll know that I wasn't a bum. And then also Mick completely chews him out in front of everybody at the gym. And then he comes back when he finds out about the shot at the title.
Yeah, Mickey's a real sad character too. Like when Rocky rejects him and he's just like at the door, he's like, I'm 71 years old. Like he knows he's made mistakes too, and he probably should have helped Rocky more than he did. But like he's trying to make good on it now. And, Rocky's a good person. He can see the good in like almost everyone, even Paulie. So he like runs out to Mickey. They work together to make it happen.
Yeah, a great scene that we quote sometimes. You want to know? I want to know. You don't want to know. I want to know. He goes, you had the talent to be a great fighter, but you threw it away to be a collector for some second-rate loan shark. It's a living.
It's a living.
It's a waste of life.
No, it's great. Everyone has such distinct voices in these movies that they're so fun to impersonate. Even Apollo. Apollo is definitely the best promo of anyone in any of the Rocky movies for sure.
Yeah. He'll even convince you that he's going to win. And I've seen the movie before. You want to talk about the fight now? is there anything else you want to talk about Rocky 1, or you want to go into the fight itself?
We can talk about the fight.
Awesome. So, the Rocky 1 fight, mentally probably the most important fight in the series. You know, it's the first one, and it puts Rocky on the map. But as far as a film editing perspective, I think that the budget probably hurt them a lot when it comes to the sound design, because it's definitely the worst edited of all the fights. And I'm not even trying to be mean. I love the movie and the fight. But when you watch the fight, even like the first couple minutes of the fight, the punch sound effects are like they're barely audible. And if you go and watch like Rocky 3, it's like every single punch, and you just feel it, and it hypes me up when you watch it. You know, the punches just mean so much more. Even if they're cartoony sound effects at certain times, it just makes it for a more satisfying fight. Whereas Rocky 1, it's like you can't feel it. It does, the punches don't interact with the audience as much, but the emotion is so high and it's so important that it almost doesn't matter. It's just more of a nitpick from me, but I don't know. What do you think of the first fight?
I was just about to say, like, that stuff like has no impact on how I view it because the characters are just so strong and you're so invested in what they're going through that you really just want to see him make good on what he's promised to do, which is just go the distance. And so for me, I always get chills watching the fight too. And I love the way that the fights are filmed in these early movies because they do a lot of like wide angles, and like it actually feels like I'm watching like a fight like on my TV. Like some of the Creed movies get like very like in the ring and in close, and that's like a cool look, I guess. But I just
Not
much
realistic.
prefer the look of the fights in these movies where it like feels like I'm actually watching it either like in the stadium or on my TV. They feel like legit like war is going on between gladiators, and it's just intense. They're brutal. When Rocky's like, cut my eye open, I like wince every time. It's so disgusting.
That scene used to
but, like,
freak me out when I was a kid. I could barely look at that. I was like, oh, and then you see the blood squirt out of his eye. Oh, it's so gross. Especially because it's the eye. It's like that's the one place like you would never want a sharp object next to. I mean, probably your dick too, but regardless, it's just really disturbing. I love that moment. Apollo realizes that it's a real fight, and the score goes like dun, 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 and they like, come on, yeah, I'm still standing. That's a great moment in the fight. Also, the final round where they like do those close-ups and they're like whispering stuff to each other, like, "Oh, you're going down, yeah." Like they could barely like even stand up, but they're still like trying to kill each other.
just beaten to the point of exhaustion. It's great. That's the thing I think about when I'm watching these movies. I'm like, I feel like they're just actually just fucking going at it. They're just actually fighting each other. And I obviously
They
know
were.
they're
Sometimes
not, but
it
I'm
got
like, these
pretty
guys,
physical on set.
like Carl Weathers would get mad and be like, all right, fuck you, Stallone, and just punch him right in the face.
That that one part where they're yelling at each other and they have to like pull them apart a little bit. That was a real moment on set where they got a little stiff with each other and they started yelling at each other, but it looked so cool that they kept it in the movie.
I'm not surprised. I mean, I was surprised that they would get like angry with each other about it, but it's like so physical and like brutal that like I'm like, how do you even fucking do this shit? It's crazy.
I mean, some of the punches in the Rocky movies you could tell aren't making contact, but obviously some of them are. They're not going to be perfect either way. They're not going to be perfect looking wise. They're not going to be perfect, not making contact wise. It's very hard to be a master, fake boxing.
I think they look pretty good. I'm convinced every time I'm watching a legit fight. It's probably why the city of Philadelphia thinks Rocky Balboa is real. And they have a statue of him. They're like, what do you mean?
You know an underrated moment in the final fight?
What?
The other guy who's on Mickey's crew, I don't remember his name. It's something weird, like Ralph or Johnny or something. But there's like this short, chubby guy. He comes back for Rocky 5 randomly. He just appears again. But Rocky's like bleeding out of his head. He's like driving back and forth, and he's about to go fight Apollo. And all of a sudden, the guy goes on the apron. He's like, "You gotta want it, Rock. You're gonna do it, Rock. You're gonna go kill him, Rock. You got it, Rock." And Rocky like can barely like stay awake, and he's like, oh yeah, oh yeah, and then he starts walking. I feel like that actor, like that wasn't a moment in the script, and he just was like, "This is my chance," and he just started yelling some stuff because the audio isn't even good. You could barely understand what he's saying, but you could tell that the passion's there, and they just decided to keep it in. I guess only Sylvester Stallone would know, or whoever worked on the movie.
No, he just got super into it. He's like, "Oh fuck, this movie's so good!" Like that was his actual reaction in the moment.
Yeah, exactly. Like, because isn't it weird that you can't really hear what he's saying?
Another thing that elevates this like whole final act is like the music of Rocky, which like everyone knows the iconic theme, like the bum 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 bum. But these movies are filled with like great music like all throughout. Like it's just building up the tension, and then the final bit of score when the fight actually ends, that gives me chills every time. It's such a triumphant moment for the character, and it's just like beautiful to watch. And then like the Adrian and Rocky coming together again, like oh my god, it's overwhelming.
I 100% agree. And it hits me just as hard at the end of Rocky 2, too. 30 minutes on Rocky 1. Do you want to move towards Rocky 2 now?
Sure.
Awesome. I love Rocky 2 so much because it's just like Halloween 2, where it picks up like right where it left off. And it's only a couple years after the first one, if that. So the actors still look the same. You know, they didn't wait like 10, 15 years to make a sequel. You know, they like, let's capitalize on this. And they did a great job on it. It's one of those like really, really great sequels that you could debate might even be better than the first one. I'm sure a lot of people like Rocky 1 more, but Rocky 2 is that good that you could even have the debate. Movie starts out, Rocky doesn't want to box anymore. Apollo wants to have a rematch instantly because he knows that did not look good for his reputation. Rocky thinks he's going to become, rich doing commercials. It doesn't really work out in his favor. And so I've heard people online say that these scenes in the movie ruin it. Like it kills the energy and the tone and the pacing's off. But you got to think like what would realistically happen if a guy retired and he was a boxing hero for his city? He's not going to be rich forever. He's got to try some other ways to make money if he doesn't want to box, and he's not the commercial type, at least not yet until later Rocky movies like Rocky 3. It's not easy for everyone to make that transition. And it is sad to see him working at like the meat factory and stuff, but I feel like it's a natural progression for the character.
I get what you mean. I understand the criticism slightly in that I remember when I first watched this movie, I was like, oh, they're really leaning on the Rocky's an idiot stuff, aren't they? Because it's almost comical how much of an idiot he is in the beginning act of this movie. He gets his money and then he's just constantly like buying things. He goes to the pet shop and he buys a dog collar for his wrist. Like what an idiot. And then he's just going to all the jewelry stores. He's buying watches for everyone. He buys a car immediately for Adrian. They go visit a house. He's like, oh, let's get it. And she's like, we haven't even seen the upstairs yet. He's like, those are details. It doesn't matter. He's just impulse spender.
You know what? I will agree with that. The money spending doesn't feel like the character that much. It feels like he is kind of stupider than he actually is because he is a smart guy. I was specifically talking about the commercial scenes. I think those belong. You're right. He does act a little too dumb. And it's frustrating too because he only has 35,000 after the fight, and a car is expensive, all those watches. It seems very off-putting for him to just blow it all immediately like that. But hey, you know what? He had to get rid of the money somehow because he needed a logical reason to go back to fighting.
He should have listened to Gazzo and put that into condominiums, but he doesn't use those.
Yeah, I don't use them. Or he should have listened to Gazzo. He should have put that money on the street. He could have worked with Tony someday.
You're right. He meets Bobby Bacala's dad. He's like, you look familiar to me.
Yeah. Him and Junior have a retirement home boxing match.
He beats up Tony, and Tony gets all jealous because he can't win fights.
You're that guy from Philly. I saw you when I was a kid.
He'd fit right into The Sopranos, I think.
Back to Rocky 2. Rocky basically gets forced into fighting again. Paulie is working as a collector for Gazzo, living it up. This is probably the most confident we see Paulie in all the movies, for once, Rocky's down on his luck, and Paulie has a bunch of money, and he's very successful at being a mob collector from what the movie leads us to believe. Instantly, that's gone in the third movie. He's back to being an alcoholic bum, lazy, good for nothing bum. But in Rocky 2, he even offers to give Adrian and Rocky money, and Rocky is too prideful to accept it. He just sells him the car or says, you can pick up the payments from here, and Paulie agrees. But Mickey, I think that this is peak Mickey for me. I love Mickey in Rocky 2, and it shows how great of a manager he really is. He's honest when he needs to be. He's critical when he needs to be. Rocky, your eyes is fucked up. You can't fight anymore. Rocky's in denial. Mickey slaps the shit out of him. You'll get killed in the ring. He doesn't lie to him. He's a manager. His job is to protect him.
An old pug like me did that. What'll the champ do to you?
I'll cave the side of your head in. Also, my favorite moment for Mickey and the whole franchise is an inspiring moment. We talked about the negative things that a manager has to do. The positive things. Rocky's in the middle of the fight, and I think he breaks his nose. He's saying to Mick, "Oh, I'm hurt. I don't feel good." And Mickey's like, "No, you're not hurt. You're not hurt because you are too tough to be hurt. You're a greasy, fast, 200-pound Italian tank. Go through him. Run over him." And then Rocky gets up. He's like, "I'm a tank. I'm a tank." But that little pep talk that he gives him means so much to Rocky. It gives him the juice to go out there and keep punching.
But even for as much as he pushes Rocky, he's still concerned towards the end of the fight, because Rocky's just getting demolished the entire time in this one, and he's just like, "All right, stop. He's gonna kill you." He's like, "No, don't stop this," and he just keeps going one more time to finally knock Apollo down. But Mickey was getting concerned at the end there, because this is definitely a more one-sided fight until the knockout at the end.
We could go into the fight a little bit. There's some things I want to also say, but the fight itself, I'd say Rocky 2 at least starts out the most hokey of all the Rocky fights. Maybe Rocky 4 would be the only one that I could say is a little bit hokier. But Rocky just takes so many punches to the head. I get it. It's a boxing match, and they're playing it up for Hollywood. But the amount of just boom, boom, his head flying back and not being murdered is crazy. But it paces itself out, and it becomes more realistic as it goes on, I would say. But that first 2 or 3 rounds, or first round or two, he just gets demolished. And if that was real, he'd be dead on the floor. To all the haters out there that say Rocky in general is unrealistic and that you would never be able to take that many shots in the face, go watch the real fight that inspired Rocky, Chuck Webner versus Muhammad Ali, because Chuck eats Muhammad Ali jabs to the face like lunch. Just boom, boom, boom. And guess what he does in response? He doesn't go down. He comes with a big right hook, just like Rocky does, to the ribs. Bang, bang. And Muhammad Ali winces. If you look at it, it's very similar to how Rocky fights. He takes it. Bang, deadly hook.
No, for sure. I remember you sent me clips of it, and I was just like, "Oh my God, this is nuts." And I think in general, people don't realize what real fighting actually looks like. To talk about pro wrestling a little bit is people were for a few decades, people are like, "Well, of course it's real. What else could it be?" Because they don't know, UFC wasn't that popular yet, so they're just that's what fighting is, right? But no, it's not.
Yeah, it took a while for UFC to get big. I think it started in the 90s, and then it didn't get really big till the mid 2000s, right?
I think so, because that's when Shane tried to buy it, and Vince is like, "No, are you an idiot?"
That would have been awesome. They would be billionaires now, or they would have just destroyed it. There are some hokey moments, but overall, it's top 3 Rocky fights for me. I think it's number 2. Rocky 2 is number 2.
It's great. I love it.
To go a little bit back, though, you talked about emotional moments for you and how much the ending scene in the first Rocky hits you. For me, the ultimate moment, probably in the whole franchise, just chills down the spine, is when Adrian goes into the coma and Rocky can't train because his head's just not screwed on right. He knows Adrian's not okay with it. and it bothers him so much. But when Adrian comes out of the coma and they're all there and Rocky's just so happy, Adrian says to him, there's just one thing I want you to do for me. Win. And then Mickey goes, well, what are we waiting for? And then that moment, it clicks in Rocky's head. He can train as hard as he possibly can because he has Adrian's approval. It unlocks a fifth gear in his brain and lets him just push his body to the absolute limit. The training montage is great, but it brings me to my favorite scene in the whole Rocky franchise, and it's actually the first scene I ever saw. I remember one night, my Nana and Papa were babysitting me. My parents were out seeing a movie, and I walked into our family room, and they were watching a movie. And the first thing I saw was these Winnie the Poohs on a cradle, and then I saw an Italian man place a baby in the cradle. And I was like, what the hell is this? 2 seconds later, bum, bada, bum, bada, bum, bada, bum. Rocky starts running. And then all of a sudden, these kids start following him. And then all of a sudden, the whole city of Philadelphia is following him. And he runs up the steps, and the music's peaking. And I'm just standing there like, what is this? This is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And then we get right to the fight. What an intro to Rocky. That scene, and then a fight. And the fight was amazing. I didn't even know what was going on, but it was such an impactful moment that I'll never forget, being exposed to the franchise. And then it was a Rocky marathon. So right after we watched Rocky 2, I got to watch Rocky 3. And then after Rocky 3, Rocky 4 came on. And we made it all the way to the final fight. And then my parents came home and my dad made me go to sleep. I had to record it and watch it the next day. But I was like, Daddy's going to fight Drago! I got to see this!
He was just trying to put you to sleep before Rocky 5 came on. I wanted to go back to what you said about, Rocky getting the strength to actually fight because of Adrian. These movies are about those two, in particular, because, you recommend Rocky to people, and they're like, oh, I don't watch boxing movies. But I can't emphasize enough how the boxing is, not the central focus of the movie. It's called Rocky. It's like a character study. It's just about this guy and this girl that he loves, and they are meant to be for each other. They give each other so much support and strength to just keep going and keep advancing in life. And it's just so powerful and just great to see. And so I just love every scene they're in together. I definitely feel I understand why eventually they kill her off, because he was oh, I feel like Adrian's just sort of saying, oh, you shouldn't fight, oh, you should fight, over and over again. But her presence is greatly missed when she eventually leaves the franchise.
Yeah, it's a shame she had to go out on Rocky 5. But that thing that you just said about, I don't like boxing movies. I heard so many people say that. It's such an idiotic thing to say. Rocky is not a boxing movie. Like you said, it's a great character story. It's a hero's journey. Are you saying you just don't like a hero's journey? If you don't like Rocky, you're not cool. You're not cool for not liking Rocky. I don't want to be your friend if you don't like Rocky. It's fine if you don't like it, but just know we're not going to be friends. I have enough friends that like Rocky. I don't need to make a compromise.
Goddamn. I agree. No, but I'll tell people to watch Rocky, and they're like, oh my God, I didn't know he's such a silly guy. He's so fun. I love him. And it's yes, I know. I think also the perception of Stallone probably doesn't help the movie that much. I think they're oh, big guy with gun, that guy in the movie. It's no, this is better than all his other movies, even though those ones are cool too. But I think the perception of those 80s action stars probably doesn't help Rocky's reputation in the eyes of a lot of moviegoers.
Well, you don't want to know what Rocky's really like? Watch the scene with Cuff and Link. Hey, what up, Cuff? Link? Want some food? You want to see your friend Moby Dick? Want to see Moby Dick? There's Moby Dick. You guys want to listen to some TV? Turn on the TV. That's who Rocky is. Proud turtle owner.
I love that those are his actual turtles and they're still alive. We brought them back.
They're huge. They're this big now. Cuff and Link, still going strong. And they have a filter now. You don't want to keep turtles in a bowl. That's fucked up.
That's actually, I just thought of it too, is just the fact that he owns 2 turtles and fish is just a great way to emphasize how often he goes to the pet store to talk to Adrian. And he's just, I guess he's just oh, I got to buy something. So he's I'll buy these fucking turtles. I don't know. I can't buy a dog right now. That's too much work. So he buys turtles and fish. And then just
remember that rock I had? I had to get rid of it because they kept flipping over.
It's great. I love him. He's such a goofy guy.
Nick, I have some bad news.
What?
Unfortunately, I don't think Moby Dick is still with us.
No, you don't know. What are you talking about?
Bro, that would be legendary.
You're talking out of your ass right now.
50-year-old goldfish, dude.
You're talking out of your ass. You don't know what you're saying. Keep your mouth shut.
We gotta call Sly. Yo, dude, is Moby Dick still alive? Is he hanging out with Cuff and Link?
How'd you get this number? Never call me again.
So the movie ends. Rocky wins the double count out. Rocky gets up at the last second in a true last man standing match trope.
A last man standing match?
Yeah, and then the music hits. Mickey hugs him, and we see Paulie and Adrian walking at home. I love that moment where Rocky starts really laying in to Apollo, and you see Paulie with the nuts or maybe his popcorn and the beer, and he just goes, "Rah!" He just like screams and throws the popcorn in the air. And then at the end, Rocky delivers probably the most quoted line in the whole Rocky franchise. Yo, Adrian, I did it.
No, you're right. I mean, what I said earlier about these movies feeling like one piece together is because, like, when I was young, even when I didn't see all the Rocky movies, I knew like so many moments that happened in the franchise, and so I just sort of assumed certain moments happened in the first one. So I was like, "What do you mean the chicken chase scene isn't in the first one? What do you mean, yo, Adrian, I didn't
Catch a little chicken."
The first one. And it's because these two movies are just one whole piece that come together because they're all like one long story, and it's perfect.
You just reminded me of one of my favorite Mickey lines when he's abusing him with the chicken. Come on, can't you catch a little chicken? You can catch this thing. You can catch grease lightning. And then Rocky's like, I feel like a Kentucky Fried Idiot. Rocky shows up with the sweatpants and the sweatshirt, and Mickey's like, why are you wearing this old thing? And Rocky goes, it brings good luck. And Mickey's like, it brings flies. That's what it brings. That's so funny.
It's great. Mickey's great with his interactions too. He's another person where they just start dropping these characters off with like every movie, and it's like I think that's another thing that disappoints me about some of the sequels is like I wish we could have had these characters for a lot longer than we had some of them. Like there was no reason
they bring him back in Rocky 5 though.
Fuck that. Don't ever say that again.
That scene was so cheesy too. They're alone in the gym together, and Mickey's like, I love you, Rocky. I love you. Sylvester Stallone went to make like Rambo 2 and 3 and a few other action movies. And in that gap between 4 and 5, he lost the character. The script does not have the tone of Rocky at all. He doesn't even feel like the same character. The plot doesn't feel like it doesn't even feel like the same franchise. So everything when you watch Rocky 5, it just feels like really off. And I think that gap and his mind being on all those other films is what ruined Rocky 5.
That would make sense. He kept coming back to it, right? Just because he it was sort of a reliable, like instant profit machine, right? Just go back to Rocky. That makes me a ton of money, right? And so he just keeps pushing it and pushing it and pushing it.
All the mistakes in Rocky 5 are like so blatantly obvious and stupid. It's like it's back to like what we were talking about with the beginning of Rocky 2. Like they just make him out to be such an idiot. Like his son's asking for his help and stuff. He's like, "Oh yeah, that's real good, son. But Tommy is who's important right now." Like we're just gonna shit all over Rocky 5. I just can't take it. I'm never watching it again. I've seen it like 2 or 3 times. I don't need to see it again, dude. Yeah, dude, that's Rocky 1 and 2 for you. I think we covered them pretty well.
I think these two are such solid movies. You can just watch them back to back. You get like one cohesive story. Even if Rocky 2 is a little bit sillier, less dramatic than the first one. Like the first one's just good on its own. You don't need any of the other sequels, but Rocky 2 just clicks together with it so well. And then it's when the other ones come in where things get a little cartoony, even though I love a lot of the other later ones. It's just like when Mr. T comes in and Mr. T is the new main villain, it's like, all right, this isn't serious anymore.
All right, we'll discuss that next time. We're going to cover Rocky 3 and 4 on the next episode of the MMF Pod. Tune in, not next Friday, but the Friday after that. I'm not sure if I'm going to do a Goblin Talk next week because I got a lot of stuff going on, but we will get back to our regularly scheduled programming very soon. And that's all for this week's episode of the MMF Pod, unless you have something to add, Nick.
No.
Thank you all for watching and making it to the end of this podcast. We appreciate it. If you haven't done so, subscribe, and we will see you next time. Thank you.